panelists for being here and take just a couple minutes to explain what the goal of this jobs conference is, why we're here, and how we're going to proceed. This is really a continuation of the 25 town halls that I've done in the first, 9-10 months of my term in office, and this will be a little different. At the town halls, I show up in communities. We've done them in all the counties of the district, and whoever comes, and we just have a conversation. This is going to be a little different. The focus of this is on job creators, and I thought if we're going to talk about jobs and creating jobs, it would make some sense to talk to job creators. And so we have assembled them in these 5 panels today to do precisely that. And this is real simple in terms of our goals. We want to identify obstacles to job creation. We want to identify opportunities that may exist. And then we're going to take what we hear today on those fronts and make sure that, we're still on the right track, because certainly we've been talking to a lot of these folks and folks at the town halls over the past months. If we hear new ideas, I'm going to get with the staff, and we're going to see what we can do to help them implement those ideas. And so the ultimate goal is to translate, where possible, the ideas that come out of this conference into public policy. And what I'm going to do here in a minute, I'm just going to let the panelists go around and introduce themselves. They're going to give you their name, where they work, and what they do there, and then we'll get going. I want this to be a free-flowing, relatively casual conversation among the members. We have large panels so that we have a diversity of views and we cover the different areas. Well, the big challenge there is making sure everybody has some time to talk. So to the extent possible, I'm going to help steer the conversation, but I'm going to try to listen as much as I can, as hard as that is for a politician to do. That's going to be my goal. If the audience has questions, that's fine, but we're not going to carve out time at the end. There are some question cards over here on this table to my right, your left, and John, who has his hand up, he will give you one of those. If you write your question down, they're going to be given to me, and if they haven't already been covered in the conversation, then I will look for a way to insert it in the conversation as we go. And that is for efficiency more than anything else. So thank you all for being here. And if you want to start, and we'll just go around in alphabetical order. For your convenience, we have arranged these A to Z, and that's so I will know who's sitting where, because I can't see all of it. I can't even see to the end of the panel without my glasses on, actually. So if you want to start, that'd be great.
Hi, my name is Rachel Albritton. I'm with the University of Arkansas Community College at Morrilton, and I am a drafting instructor and a Green Advantage trainer for the college.
Good morning. My name is Nick Brown. I'm the President and Chief Executive Officer of Southwest Power Pool, located here in Little Rock.
Good morning. I'm Danny Ferguson. I'm the Vice President of Government and Community Relations for Southwestern Energy Natural Gas Company.
Good morning. I'm Sandra Hochstetter Bird, and I serve as the Vice President of Strategic Affairs for the Arkansas Electric Cooperatives.
Good morning. I'm Danny Gaines, Manager of External Affairs for BHP Billiton Petroleum. Our operations in Arkansas include Fayetteville Shell.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ken Kimbrough. I'm with Tyson Foods, and I'm the Chief HR Officer with Tyson.
My name is Wayne Lee. I'm the CEO of Lee Enterprises, which is based right here in Little Rock, which is the world's largest biodiesel consulting firm.
Good morning all. My name is Hemkant Limaye, and I'm with LM Wind Power Blades based at Little Rock, Arkansas. We are the world's largest manufacturer of wind turbine blades, and currently we operate 2 facilities in Little Rock and 1 in North Dakota. I am quite pleased to be here.
My name's Joey Lowry. I'm a catfish producer here in Arkansas. I currently serve as chairman of the board of Catfish Farmers of America. Cal McCaslin. I'm with the Agricultural Council of Arkansas. We're a row crop organization.
Good morning, I'm Hugh McDonald, President and CEO of Entergy Arkansas.
Good morning, I'm Kelly Robbins. I'm with the Arkansas Independent Producers and Royalty Owners Association, and we represent those who are involved in the production of oil and natural gas here in Arkansas.
Good morning, Annette Pagan. I'm with Winlock International, and I'm the director of their U.S. programs.
Good morning, Tim Snell. I work for Nature Conservancy in Arkansas, and I'm the director of water resources.
Good morning, I'm Randy Veach. I'm a farmer, cotton, rice, soybeans, wheat, corn from northeast Arkansas, Mississippi County. I'm also president of Arkansas Farm Bureau. Good morning.
Thank y'all so much. I will tell you that since I got in office, started in January, I've had a lot of constituents meet with me. Many of y'all have met with me and shared your concerns about a number of things. I would say that what I hear most in terms of job creators concerned is about regulations and the regulatory structure, the way regulations are issued, and some substantive regulations separate from the process, but some specific regulations. What I'd like to do first, and we'll get into I have some specific questions for industry, but if anyone wants to share their biggest concern right now. For example, I know that Farm Bureau was really concerned about getting the trade agreements passed. Well, those are passed. I know that a lot of the industry in the district have been concerned about what's known as the EPA's Boiler MAC rule. And we have made some progress in getting a delay there. But if anybody who'd like to comment, tell me if there's one thing that is standing in your way in terms of hiring people, growing your business, compared to the growth path you used to be on, what is that, and what can we do about it? Anybody?
I think,
Sandra, you
sorry.
want?
We're actually more concerned about job losses, quite frankly, in the state because of the plethora of rules that are coming out of the Environmental Protection Agency. This is an unprecedented situation. At no point in the history of anybody's recollection has the EPA promulgated so fast and furiously so many regulations that would interrupt our ability to provide reliable, cost-effective energy to consumers. The utility MACT rule that you mentioned is a huge one. There's many others, such as cross-state air pollution rule, clean air visibility rule, the rule on water intake structures, and coal ash residuals. We very much appreciate your support of the Train Act and the coal ash residual rule. These rules, unfortunately, are being promulgated without an awareness of what it takes on the utilities' part to retrofit plants, to do new construction, and to meet deadlines. As for instance, these two most prominent rules, MACT and Clean Air Visibility Rule, could actually cause us to have to shut our coal plants down if they're not extended. They want to put them into effect January 2015, and realistically speaking, it's going to be mid-2016 or mid-2017 before the utilities can get the labor forces out there and the materials to do the retrofits. It's not that we wouldn't be able to comply at some point, it's the aggressive time schedule that's the issue. And if you shut down plants, and Nick and Hugh can address that too, you have a huge electric reliability problem. You're also increasing costs, which can drive more jobs overseas. That's one of our primary concerns.
So can you give me specifics on which plants, how many plants, where are they, and what the impact, the specific impact to Arkansas and this district would be?
Well, we, along with Entergy, co-own the three coal, well, and AEP also, we co-own the plants here in Arkansas. Flint Creek is co-owned by us and AEP SWEPCO. Entergy and the co-ops co-own White Bluff and Independence. And those three plants combined represent 80% of the energy that we supply to our customers. And it's a few thousand megawatts. That's a significant chunk of the capacity in this state. And there are huge reliability impacts with taking those offline prematurely because we can't meet an arbitrary deadline.
you. Do you want to, or Nick, do you want to comment on that?
No, Sandy's exactly right. I mean, the issue, the overarching issue is the timing. I think the industry has known that these rules were going to be coming down at a certain point in time, but the CASPER rule, for example, the cross-state air pollution rule, was finalized last July, I believe. It was modified just last couple weeks ago, but the deadline to implement the measures is May of next year, where you physically cannot engineer and get all these, get the emission controls installed in the plants. And that puts the utilities in a compliance situation if they can't get these emission controls installed. And the alternative is redispatching the plants, lowering the plants. That increases cost to customers. To the most extreme position is actually turning down the plants. So it's a huge issue that probably the number one issue that the industry is facing really across the country.
And how many jobs are we talking about in these plants in Arkansas?
You know, the White Bluff plant has probably got about 200 employees, similar at Independence.
Nick, do you want to
So
comment?
we, as Sandy said, the main issue here is the accelerated timetable. The bulk electric network takes, in many cases, decades to plan these magnitude of power plants and all the associated transmission infrastructure to support those particular plants. And then in a 2-year time frame or less in some cases to have to completely rethink a generation profile, a fuel mix, and all of the transmission implications that those decisions bring about is just, well, it's untenable for our industry. We have proposed to the EPA in a couple of letters a kind of a safe harbor, a backstop provision where organizations similar to Southwest Power Pool could come in and issue a stay on a particular plant for reliability reasons. And while we believe this is getting broad-based support, we have yet to really hear the kind of positive response from EPA that we're looking for.
And as you know, in terms of what we can do, we can write letters, we can make phone calls, but the current administrative process is created in such a way where once Congress authorizes the writing of regulations, they don't have to come back to us for a rubber stamp or an okay. We have legislation that would create that in the RAINS Act that would make the agencies that are promulgating regulations come back to the Congress. I met with the United Transportation Union, I guess it was yesterday, and Bullermac was at the top of their list as well. So it sounds like there are folks, different stakeholders from different areas of the spectrum, political spectrum, who are agreeing on that. I want to ask since you raised the EPA, I assume and I know that you're not anti-regulation. You have thousands of regulations that regulate you. But I want to get some of the other industries. I hear a lot from the ag folks about some of the EPA rules. Cal or Randy or anyone want to comment on that from the other industries?
We're a tremendous, in the agriculture industry, we're a tremendous user of energy to start with. And Mr. Kimbrough will certainly agree that in inputs into poultry production and all kinds of production, that energy is extremely a big expense for us. And when that goes up, so does cost of production. And when it does, when it goes up like that, then it limits our profitability and actually can take us out of profitability. And when that does, then that's going to limit what Mr. Kimbrough and them can do on marketing their product. And as you reduce those markets, you lose jobs. and it's a big factor, and input costs are extremely important to us. I think that also on the energy side, when we're talking about our carbon footprint and carbon sequestration, of course, agriculture, we have been in the carbon sequestration business since we began, and that's what we do. Anything we grow the green sequester carbons out of the air, and we're very much playing in that. But issues like cap and trade, for instance, that picks winners and losers, and we'd have a large group of agriculture producers that would have benefited from cap and trade, but overall it would have increased our energy costs to the point that we would have paid them a lot more in input costs than we would have gained out of carbon credits by far, a whole lot. And those issues are extremely important to us. And when you implement any kind of regulation or controls with law in that area, we drive jobs offshore to other countries. Until we get a handle globally on carbon footprint, we're going to drive our industry to China and India and places like that if we over-regulate that industry. And when we do, then we're going to lose a tremendous lot of jobs. And that's going to trickle down to all the industries, and more jobs and more jobs and more jobs will be lost. EPA is really becoming a nightmare for us in agriculture. The last thing that they brought up is under the Clean Air Act is called fugitive dust, which means that if it's, we have droughts, and we've had a severe drought in southern Arkansas this year, and across Texas and Louisiana and Georgia and Florida and Oklahoma. And if you have to stop production agriculture when you're out there and you're throwing up some dust and it's a 10-mile-an-hour wind and you have to shut down, there's no way that we can stay profitable. Agriculture, there's one thing that's constant in agriculture when you're talking about sustainability. Sustainable agriculture is only sustainable when it's profitable. If you take the profit out of agriculture, we're not sustainable. Where we're not sustainable, neither are a lot of your jobs in this state or around the nation.
Well, and you're also, you're facing a situation where a lot of the direct payments and other things that historically have been there, the federal government is obviously looking at those to trim them back at the same time that you're struggling with profitability. And Ed or Tim, do y'all have any comment on this area? Is this something that y'all dealt with?
I would just like to say that I agree with Randy on his comments, but also would like to add that we have been looking at ways to help farmers, rice farmers in particular, how we can help them become more profitable by reducing their greenhouse gases, and that is reducing the amount of water they use, being more conservation conscious about the water and how it's held on the fields. And we believe that they can do this on a voluntary basis and become more competitive by reducing their greenhouse gases. So I just wanted to add that to his comments, that there's ways to reduce our greenhouse gases and our carbon footprints without regulations.
Do you go to these farmers, or do they come to you? How does that relationship begin?
We have now a contract with NRCS to do some studies with rice farmers. We've identified some who are interested in changing practices and trying the changing of practices that would reduce their greenhouse gases. So it's a 2-year project. We've just been funded to do that, and so we're looking at identifying those rice farmers now. We've got probably 6 or 7 to do a demonstration project, and they're over, around Stuttgart.
And now everybody knows about it.
And now everybody knows about it, and everybody will be watching for it. And we do plan to have some meetings with farm bureaus and the Rice Association and U.S.
I agree with exactly what Kelly's saying there. We, over the last 10 to 20 years, we have reduced our carbon footprint in agriculture significantly, and we continue to work on it. Most of the time, if it's not a regulation that really is cost prohibitive and less water usage, and we've really reduced it in cotton production and also in rice production. But you're exactly right, and actually those kind of things you're talking about reduces our bottom line, not our profitability. It reduces our expense input when we can do it where we can still have production, and we appreciate what you're doing.
Cal,
I'd like to go back to the point Randy hit on right there at the end on the dust. This dust issue in my mind is Exhibit A of what's going wrong with EPA. And there's an article in today's paper in the business section where EPA had to come out and write a letter, and they debunk the dust discussion as a myth. Well, it's not a myth. It's industry's response to something that's going on inside EPA and some message they're putting out. When our industry has to take a policy position about dust and regulations coming out of EPA about dust, EPA has done something that puts up a red flag for us. It's not a myth. There's something going on in that agency that's just totally out of hand. Regulating dust is like regulating pollen. You just can't do that. Yet we're having to spend resources to address it. Now maybe it's put to bed. I mean, Senator Bozeman and some others had to join in a bill to legislate to prevent a regulation on dust. So something's going on up there, and something is not a myth. It's costing us to respond to what's going on.
well, we're talking about it here today. Christy Nome in the House introduced a bill. I think it was Christy Nome introduced the bill. I'm a co-sponsor of that bill, and it basically reflects what the Senate bill does on that. In terms of aquaculture or your chicken industry, any comments on this?
Well, the thing that we see or we feel is just the lack of common sense. I don't believe that there's a person sitting up here or an industry representative that doesn't want a safe, clean environment for ourselves, for our children and our grandchildren. The issue that we have to deal with is we make arbitrary, sweeping changes and then expect immediate correction without thinking through the business process of what that means. I understand the intended consequence, but it seems like we absolutely turned a blind eye to the unintended consequence of what that's going to mean to us, our industry, to the state of Arkansas, and the jobs that support everything that we do. And it seems to be lost in an academic exercise without the consequence of what's going to happen. And we face it across the full spectrum of government agencies. And it's terribly frustrating because we all want to do the right thing. We all want to make a living, provide jobs for ourselves and others so that our economy and our state continues to grow.
Has it impacted aquaculture at all? And if not, what is the one thing that can help y'all?
Well, from what you're talking about, the catfish industry consumes a lot of electricity. We primarily use electricity for aeration on the ponds. And it just brought to my attention yesterday that this pending EPA legislation, they said that these updates to these plants will probably cost more than what the plant costs to build. So, energy affects everyone, and it's a big cost to us, and you keep increasing costs, it's a big effect to us. But I think they're right. Looking at some of these guys in Washington, we need more common sense up there. You just can't flip the switch on and off, and, to change.
So you agree that it's the aggressiveness of the time frame that is putting most of the pressure. You're not having time to, over X number of years, to move into this, make the investments, make the infrastructure changes. That's I think what I'm hearing here.
I think there's a large economic consideration to that too.
be able to do it. And, 80% of our electricity is fired by coal plants. Is that?
It's approximately 50% in Arkansas.
In Arkansas,
And
50%.
And then nuclear is a big chunk because of ANO 1 and 2. Can I quickly throw in what that price tag is that we've kind of been talking around a little bit? Just to comply with the MACT rule and the Clean Air Visibility Rule and potentially 316B, which has to do with the water cooling process for the fossil fuel plants, we're looking at $2.5 billion to $3 billion just in the state of Arkansas. We've calculated that's going to be a 20 to 25% rate increase for our consumers. It's probably somewhat similar for the other electric utilities in this state. And one of the issues with this immediacy of compliance is not only the ability to do it with, enough manpower and materials, but the ability to do it in a way that doesn't cause rate shock to customers. If we could have a little bit more time to gradually do this in a orderly fashion, we could also spread out the rate impact to consumers. And as a former chairman of the PSC, that's critically important. I mean, it's important to the utilities, but it's also important from a public policy standpoint. You can't just immediately throw that kind of a price increase on folks and expect it not to have adverse impacts such as job losses and just the ability to pay your bill.
And Congressman, if I could add one thing to Sandy's comments. With these new rules, it's going to require every utility in the country that has a coal plant to hire engineers and construction firms, a finite amount, that have this skill. So you're going to have an inordinate amount of demand for a limited amount of supply of the skill set, and the commodity prices, of course, are going to go sky high during this process in the short time frame. So it's a huge challenge for the industry.
Well, one of the things that we have been pushing to do in the House is to legislate a requirement that before the EPA and other agencies embark on their rule promulgating process, that they have to conduct a jobs analysis, what the impact would be on jobs. There is an incredible video of a friend of mine who's a congressman from Colorado, Cory Gardner, questioning in front of the Energy and Commerce Committee an EPA, one of the EPA top guys. And he's talking about the economic analysis that EPA says that they do before they issue a rule. And he said, well, did you consider, Congressman Gardner said, did you consider jobs, the impact on jobs as part of your economic analysis? And the guy's answer, after a long cross-examination and squirming in the chair, the answer was no. And I think a lot of us say, well, what kind of economic analysis were you doing if you didn't consider job loss or price to consumers or what have you? Tim, did you have anything to say on that front?
Well, the only thing I would say is, the reasonableness is the factor that needs to be in there, and the timing. Nature Conservancy is always looking for, producers driving the solution. That way, they're the ones who know how to do it. Even if they're working towards the same end as the regulations, we would much rather have the industries and the producers be coming up with the best management practices and give them time to work. A lot of stuff that you do on the land takes time. You can't just give you crops or any kind of remediation. You put the seed in the ground, you do the work, but it takes time for it to actually work. And that's what we would like, is for there to be enough time for the producer-driven solutions to take effect.
Gotcha.
Congressman, could I?
Sure.
I'm certainly not a representative of the pulp and paper industry, but since they're not at the table, there was, and we haven't talked at all about renewable energy or the opportunities yet in the state, but there was the craziest rule, I'm looking at Kelly to see if he still follows all this, about the handling of waste, and the pulp and paper industry utilize that biomass to, in fact, produce electricity and steam in their plants. And there was this absolutely crazy rule about how it had to be handled. taken care of. But again, there is some generation of sort of ideas out of the box coming out of EPA.
It's sort of a top-down, it sounds like there's not a lot of consultation with folks like you, who have the boots on the ground, so to speak, in terms of establishing the timeframes and what have you. Do you want to comment on I don't know if you had a comment on the biomass thing, or you want to talk more broadly about your industry?
In the renewable industry, in the biodiesel sector, the issue is really twofold. It's the equality of subsidies, and what's the purpose of having a subsidy? I mean, why do we have subsidies, and are we going to have them? And if we're going to have them, how are they going to be equal to everybody? The oil and gas industry's had subsidies since 1913 that are in place, and they stay in place. The alternative fuels industries like biodiesel, they go back every year for scraps off the table. And if we're going to implement meaningful alternative fuels, then we have to decide either we're not going to subsidize anybody, or we're going to subsidize the people we're trying to make come into the marketplace. So we had 5 producing, there's 118 biodiesel plants in the United States. We had 5 producing biodiesel plants in Arkansas at one point. There's 2 now. The largest biodiesel consulting firm is mine. It's right here in Little Rock. The people that have built more biodiesel plants than anybody in the United States are in Stuttgart, and they employ 70 people at a time when they're up and fully running, and it pumped millions of dollars into the economy. But the issue becomes, and we're utilizing the animal fats, the soybean. I mean, so we're propping up for everybody, but the problem is, from an investment perspective on a new industry, the banker and the lender and the investor get really nervous if year in and year out they don't know what their subsidy is. Do we put it in our balance sheet, or don't we? So the question has become, do we take the subsidy out, or do we leave the subsidy and the dollar tax credit for biofuels? Do we leave that, or do we take it away? If we take it away, there's some say, well, we took it away in 09. We know exactly what happened in 10. The industry virtually shut down. It's a brand new industry. It needs subsidy. There are some that say, well, if you take it away, the price of the renewable identification number, those RIN numbers, will beef up to support that. And nobody really knows the answer to that, but what we do know is this. We do know it's been taken away once, and it virtually killed the industry. We do know that if you're going to take it away, it's a better opportunity to take it away gradually. We do know that you don't want to shock the marketplace. It's the same thing as coming in with regulation fast. You don't want to shock the marketplace by taking it away December 31st for the next year, because the lenders don't have time to react. So I think what you'll see happen if the dollar tax credit is taken away is you'll see a lot of the littler, smaller biodiesel plants, and because you're mixing biodiesel in such a small portion, you probably got 5% biodiesel in most of your diesel fuel now and don't know it. But I would say what you're going to see is a lot of smaller producers go out of business, and a lot of larger producers who have just made the determination we're not going to put that in our factory, stay in business. But it's got to be something that's decided. We're all in this together. It's not an alternative fuels wins or oil and gas wins. It's not a win-lose situation for one industry as much as it is everybody's in this together trying to make the country better. So, and when we think, I think in those terms, I think 14, when you look at the people that the industry employs to build them, to operate them, to transport the fuel, to come get the crops, to come get the chicken fat, when you look at that and you look at right now, 14 million out of work people provide a pretty good impetus for let's make economy the top priority. The economist that has recently weighed in on this, and I don't know if everybody knows about this, but the people that are the most concerned with biofuels right now are the U.S. military. The biggest proponent, one of the biggest proponents of biofuels is the former head of the CIA, because the problem is it costs about $400 a gallon to get fuel to people on the front lines. because of the security issues that are going on. This is a national security issue, it's an economic issue. The economists have said that if you took 25% of the oil that is imported into this country, not all the oil, but just the imported oil, if you took 25% of that oil and you converted that to biodiesel, the economic problems would flip themselves around pretty quick like. You also realize that if oil hits $125 a barrel this next time, OPEC owns 1/2 of the world's wealth. That's a little bit of a scary thought when you figure.
Let me, go ahead. Then I want to talk about ethanol. Go ahead.
Yeah, wind right now is the largest and the most scalable of the renewable energy. Over the last 4 years, 35% of the entire new capacity that has been brought online has been wind. And the issue this industry faces is the uncertainty. It's always boom and bust cycle. Over the last decade, the PTC, which is the single most factor that keeps the jobs and the economy running for the wind, has been allowed to expire. And what it has caused is installations and jobs go down by anywhere between 75 to 95%. What it means for approximately 80,000 plus workers that are employed in the wind industry across the United States is tomorrow we might not have any job. The issue that baffles us is wind is good whichever way you look at it. It's clean, affordable, and homegrown. You cannot send these jobs overseas on wire or to China in any way. It has to be produced here in the United States. And it's not that the resources are scarce. The United States has one of the best wind resources in the world, comparable. I guess best. That's the industry. That's the unanimous opinion of the industry. What we're just looking at is a continuation of a policy which supports the job growth. What it also does is also diversifies the energy mix, provides a lot of high-paying local engineering and manufacturing jobs. If you compare it against Europe, we have potential to double the number of jobs per megawatt, up from 25% to 60%. We can make it up to 90%, but what we need is a long-term extension of production tax credit, and it's a non-discretionary tax credit. It doesn't take money out of taxpayers' pocket unless a turbine produces electricity. So it is good for the industry, it's good for the energy mix, it's good for the local jobs. And what this industry is really asking is some kind of continuity. If you're going to take us off PTC, at least give us 4 or 5 years notice so that then we take appropriate actions in terms of A, either bringing down the cost so that it doesn't need any subsidy, or B, then look out for some lucrative market elsewhere. But it causes real job losses whenever the PTC expires.
You raised a good point about tax credit. This gives me an opportunity. I do want to talk about ethanol, and I will. I think you have some thoughts. I know you have thoughts on ethanol, and I heard ethanol in the back when you were talking about disparate treatment. You're probably talking about how ethanol gets support, and I have actually voted to stop ethanol supports. But I want to talk to some of the oil and gas folks for a second, and I'd like to hear what your general view is, how things are going, not only here in Arkansas, but elsewhere, and tell us what the number one thing that you would change, the obstacle that you would eliminate, what we could do from a public policy perspective to help. And then I want to talk more broadly about tax reform and what tax reform would look like if some of your credits, some of the folks at the table's credits and deductions, and as the president calls it, loopholes, were to disappear, and what that world would look like. But why don't we, Danny, you want to start with just talking about what your biggest barrier is to expanding production? Is it a regulatory barrier, or is it something else?
Well, I tell you, before I address that, let me go to the 10,000-foot view and make a comment that will kind of tie on to a comment earlier. In July, the U.S. trade deficit was about $44 billion. Of that $44 billion for that 1 month, $37 billion of that was imported oil. If we could cut our foreign oil imports just in half, we'll never be able to eliminate them, but if we could cut them just in half, and we're already spending, that would be $18.5 billion a month. It's money we're already spending. It's no new money, no new tax dollars. If you could pump $18.5 billion a month in the U.S. economy, look at what economic stimulus program that would be. And you could do that through increased domestic oil production, biofuels, conversion of fleets to compressed natural gas, and also keep in mind with that $18.5 billion a month, the United States is one of, if not the only country in the world producing oil and natural gas where the citizens own the minerals. In all other countries, the governments own the minerals. So, if you go with the Chamber of Commerce theories that a dollar turns over 7 times, I mean, can you imagine what $18 or $19 billion a month would do to the U.S. economy? I mean, not just the jobs that would be produced in the oil and gas production, but jobs in tourism, services, housing. I mean, that's an economic stimulus program that I just think we sometimes overlook, and it's money we are already spending. And we're spending a lot of that in countries that don't necessarily like us. If the one half that we would continue to import could probably all come from Canada. So, I'd like to talk about jobs in the natural gas and oil industry in Arkansas, but I think first we need to realize that there is a tremendous economic stimulus program out there just hanging to be taken advantage of in the United States.
Can I ask you something on that? First of all, I wholeheartedly agree, and I've been preaching that since I got to Congress. Some estimate that you're talking about 1 million new jobs because you don't even have to increase energy consumption. All you have to do is keep steady and take the jobs that are on the other side of the world and bring them back here. And so my next question, I agree on your general point, 110%. What's the barrier to going there? I have often said that it'd be good to have a President Kennedy-like speech. He set the goal of going to the moon. I'd like to see the president give a speech today or tomorrow and say, in X number of years, we're going to be energy independent, and this is how we're going to do it. But what levers need to be turned, pulled, to encourage more of what you're talking about?
Well, I think it's twofold. First of all, I think you have to look from the consumer viewpoint, and that's, something we hear about all the time, but just certainty and predictability. One of the results of shale gas being produced in the United States, especially starting in 2008 and up until today, is it's really flooded the market with natural gas, and you've seen prices of natural gas fall from $8 and $9 an MCF to last week $3.55. I think you would see huge conversions to compressed natural gas and other usages for it if the consumers were convinced that natural gas was going to stay at a reasonable level. But when you look at, for instance, one of the proposals to take away the deductibility of intangible drilling costs, I'll tell you, when you drill a $3 million Fayetteville shale well, your tangible value of that well is pretty small. It's basically just the pipe with the cement's down in the well and a little Christmas tree on the top, and that's it. That's your only tangible drilling costs. The super vast majority of that is labor and service companies and the cost of completing that well and so forth. So you take away the ability to deduct those intangible drilling costs. For every $3 million you add to the cost of drilling in Arkansas, you take away the drilling of one Fayetteville shale well. And you do that many times over, and you take away existing jobs and a lot of the potential of the growth. I think if the cost of drilling oil and gas wells in the United States, and I'll stop here for a moment and tell you that all of the increase in production, both natural gas and oil in the United States, is coming from unconventional resources. our low-hanging conventional oil and natural gas formations, most of those have been found. So your increase is coming from your unconventional formations. I think if consumers and business and industry were convinced that natural gas prices were going to remain stable in the long term in the U.S., I think you would see an increase in domestic oil and gas production and domestic oil and gas usage.
Danny, or other Danny, do you want to
Yeah,
give some input on that?
And I think just to bring the view just a little bit lower, but to broaden the definition of job creation, which is the core of the discussion here. And I think some of the other industry sectors here could make a similar case. But when you think of the oil and gas industry in the state of Arkansas, keep in mind that one-third of the counties in the state of Arkansas have oil or gas production. That is a very significant economic impact, particularly as it relates to our gross state product each year. But I was looking at the agenda, and the majority of the industry sectors that you have that you will have represented here today, Congressman, represent what occurs in our industry. Transportation, education is integral to our success. Manufacturing, you have St. Gobain and Bauxite announce a $100 million investment, 140 jobs. Wellspun in the Little Rock Port, several other manufacturing companies. They are serving the oil and gas industry in the state and in the region, for that matter. If you spend any time in north central Arkansas, you'll realize real estate, retail, financial services are integral to the success of this industry and to the success of the state. So we need to make sure that we keep in mind, as some of the other points that have been made here, that when we do make decisions, we make policy, we make regulations, that there is a significant ripple effect, and the more stability that the basic economic activities can have, then the more stability and predictability. And I'll just cite, just to make a concluding point, we regularly have bankers who make a lot of loans to a lot of people who do business with us. They regularly contact us and want to know about the future and the certainty of the development of this industry. It is very important to them. It's very important to their customers, very important to their employees and the employees of the people they loan money to. And they're looking for certainty, and it affects all of us.
Well, we've heard the issue of uncertainty from you, the issue of uncertainty from you, the issue of uncertainty from y'all on this on the oil and gas side, in terms of what's coming next and how do we sustain ourselves. That is a recurring theme, and I hear that and have heard that for the whole time I've been in office. Got several things here. I got a question from the audience, which I'll get to in a second. Kelly, do you want to chime in on that?
Your question, I think, Congressman, you said what in oil and natural gas, what locally here in Arkansas are we dealing with? And I think it's competition from other states, from other plays for very limited drilling capital and expenditures. And we want that to stay and remain here in the 2nd District. We want it to remain in Arkansas, yet across the country, as technology and knowledge advances, well, we know that there's natural gas located in other places. But I think, and I applaud you for your efforts here today and your efforts to try to keep, retain, and increase employment here in the 2nd District. And we need to make certain, and some of it's on the state level, but we need to remain competitive here in Arkansas against some of these other competing plays around the country.
Gotcha. I'm going to try to ask this question real quickly. I think it's Danny. I think it came out of something that you said. I think the general point is that in 1971, we were producing domestically 10.2 million barrels a day. Today, we are producing 4.7 billion. I think that increased capacity, I think the general point of this question is, would increased capacity of oil, of domestic oil and gas or oil, would that really make up what we need here? And I heard you mention that it sounded like you were saying even if not, we'd get a lot from Canada instead of getting it from Saudi Arabia. But do you have any comment on that, in our capacity to plus up what we already produce to cover a lot of the imports?
Well, to give you an idea, the Bakken Shale in Montana and North Dakota is a very new shale. I mean, the Fayetteville Shale was only discovered in 2004. Bakken Shale has probably only been around a couple of years. It's an unconventional oil formation that requires hydraulic fracturing, but I just read an article, in fact, it was a story in the Democrat Gazette just in the last few weeks, that said that within 1 year, the Bakken Shale is going to be producing 1.1 million barrels of oil per day, which is the amount we are currently importing from Saudi Arabia. So, I mean, there's some real potential in the U.S. to increase our production. Do I think we could ever become totally independent from imported oil? I mean, it would take a long time, but I mean, Canada could supply us for with 1/2 of our current level of oil we're importing, so we would be keeping our foreign purchases in North America.
And from a national security perspective, Canada is a friend. They like us, as you
Right.
said.
One other point I'd like to bring up just real quickly, because this is focused on jobs, is that in the oil and gas industry in the entire United States, we have an aging workforce, and a lot of that's been because of the kind of unpredictability of oil and gas production. Now I think, with the emphasis on domestic production, you're going to see a very steady and very predictable increase in domestic production of both oil and natural gas. So one thing I know our company is doing is we're struggling to fill the need for our technology workers, specifically petroleum engineers and geologists. And I know we've got UACCM represented at the table today, but for the ones out there that may not know this, that UACCM is one of the few places in the country right now where you can get an associate degree in petroleum technology. So I think one thing we need to do in Arkansas and in our nation is make sure we train our workforce for these jobs, which, by the way, in Arkansas, pay about $30,000 higher than the average wage.
Rachel, can you tell us a little bit about the program and how you all are working with private industry to fill their needs? Because I know you're not just training for academic reasons, although there's nothing wrong with that. You are helping fill a void.
Absolutely. We have a wonderful, strong technical community at the community college, as well as a very strong academic community. But on the technical side, we are, I believe, the only 2-year program in the state that does have a petroleum technology program, which is an Associate of Applied Science, and it is mostly funded through the Fayetteville Shale. And we try to send students out, well, we do send students out straight to work as soon as they finish their degree, but also we just received, as part of the 2-year colleges in the state, the AESP grant, which is a green grant, is what we call it. It's from the Department of Labor, which provides training in sustainability and green jobs in as many technical industries as what we can train them in. And right now, we are currently training drafting for construction green jobs, HVAC for energy efficiency jobs, and we are also taking the training into our adult education sector, trying to train. Mostly we're trying to reach out to workers who may have been laid off and are looking to come back for training. But what everybody's saying has just been so eye-opening. A lot of this stuff we know, but we're not in it every day, as you guys are. And so what I keep hearing is the time frame, and I agree with all of you. And that trickles down to education. Like Danny said, it is a ripple effect. And one thing with the time frame is, if these different guidelines are coming into effect, then that directly comes back and affects us. And I wish we had more of an open communication with what type of training do you need specifically. We do Green Advantage certification for our students, but that doesn't necessarily prepare them for the type of job that you guys need them to be prepared for.
Yep.
I think one of the things that we look at is that this needs to be a cooperative effort and a comprehensive effort in this. Subsidies and mandates are not popular words with the voting public, but we do know that energy is key to the economy. We also know that while oil and gas has the lion's share of that the natural gases, the wind energies, the biofuels, these are none of those standing alone, at least in my opinion, none of those standing alone are the answer to the question. It's arrows in one quiver that have to work together to be able to make the end result go where you want to go with it. So it's got to be, when we look at subsidies and mandates, and we look at, maybe we form an Arkansas coalition to say, hey, how do all these industries work together? You know, because when the biodiesel industry, we buy chicken fat and we buy soybeans, and you know, so all these industries are dependent on each other, and then the end result is everybody's critically concerned with energy, because energy is what's making the economy float up and down. So how do we work together and see everybody as being one arrow in the quiver, and realize that we're all in the game together, as opposed to significant interests separately?
Maybe we can have these panels a lot, if you don't do your coalition. That's a joke. Let me ask everyone a broad question about subsidies, deductions, credits, all of these things that many of you count on for your industry. And in the oil and gas industry, we heard deduction of intangible drilling cost. There's the depletion allowance. There are these things that you count on. And I'll start with a little anecdote to set this up. Someone in the oil and gas industry here in the state came to me. He's a friend of mine, and we were talking about some of the stuff that he had read in the press or heard on television. And he said, you know, Tim, if y'all close the depletion allowance, quote, loophole, he said, I've got 50 employees. He said, I'm not going to have 50 employees anymore. I'm going to have a lot fewer, because that is a critical allowance for me to do business and remain profitable. And I said, well, you know, we're talking a lot about fundamental tax reform that would impact everyone at this table, whether you pay corporate tax or whether you pay individual tax as a pass-through LLC or what have you. And I said, we're talking about that, and the President surely has talked about loopholes a lot, but we actually voted in our budget in the spring to eliminate a lot of loopholes and reduce the rate. So my question to him was, and this is the question I sort of want to ask, and I'm going to ask every panel this. Think about, if you would please, the credits and the deductions and the allowances and the things that are in the tax code that are for your industry or for industry in general that you count on to remain profitable. And we have a corporate tax that is 35%. It's the highest in the world. I read yesterday that 75 countries have reduced their corporate tax rate to remain competitive over the last 4 years. President Clinton has talked a lot about reforming our corporate tax. Our tax is 35%, but our effective tax rate is lower, depending on your deductions, your credits, your allowances, what have you. So my question is, how low from a 35% corporate tax rate, for those of you who pay corporate tax, how low would a corporate tax rate have to go to allow you to remain profitable and eliminate the deductions. The reason I say that is the average corporate tax rate of the OECD, the 30 industrialized countries, is like 23.8 or something like that. Okay, ours is 35. As we know, GE had a 0% effective tax rate last year, apparently. So I asked my buddy with the oil and gas company, I said, how low would it have to go if we eliminated all of the stuff you count on? How low would it have to go? I said, what about the 23% that the Bipartisan Debt Commission proposed that we've talked about doing in the House? Would that cover all of the complexities that you have to track every year to get to a profitable point? He said, I have to look. He came back to me and said, you know, if it was 23%, you could do away with all of those credits, deductions, whatever, and I would be fine. So he was basically telling me that I need all of this stuff to remain competitive with our sky-high set corporate tax rate. If you lower that to a flat rate that everybody pays, then I won't be as dependent on all this stuff. So does anyone have a view on that? Hugh, how would that impact Entergy?
Well, I would tell you that our effective tax rate, the last time I looked, was still in the high 30s. Because our rates, the prices that we charge to customers are regulated, taxes flow through, whether it's 23% or 35%. But I would say that, a 23% corporate tax, and if that's the effective tax rate, those savings flow directly through consumers. And so that's additional discretionary spending in our customers' pockets.
Well, what we would hope to do by eliminating a lot of the credits and what have you, and I've talked to a lot of different industries about this, including the semiconductor industry who relies heavily on tax credits. The goal would be to eliminate the difference between the statutory rate and the effective rate, where they would be the same. There would be no such thing. You would eliminate a lot of the variation. And Caterpillar's CEO was quoted as saying something like, well, look, if we have to pay a higher rate, we'd be willing to do that if we could plan 10 years out and we just knew every year our rate was going to be the same. Anybody else? Yep, Cal.
Well, I think, and whether it's the debt commission or whatever group is coming up with a rate or trying to peg something, I think the guiding principle on the tax policy from business should address a couple of things. One is it's a global market. We've made all of this talk about global markets and trade and whatnot, which we all depend upon. The tax code has got to reflect that as well, particularly among the multinational companies. That's hitting you on 2 points. One is if I've got a company like Caterpillar that's already operating in several different countries, GE, where's their money parked? We would like to get some of that back by getting our corporate code competitive on the market for multinational companies. The next thing we've got, that's not only in
You're
those...
talking about repatriation of overseas
Right.
profits.
And that would be one thing, you could probably get some of that back. But the longer term outlook is you want to have a competitive tax code for the multinational companies, for those that are operating here to any extent right now, but also to recruit other companies. We've got an example sitting here right now, would probably be more attractive and could attract more industry here to the United States if we have that competitive corporate tax code for multinationals. But let's not forget about all the homegrown companies that we've got out there too, and not lose sight of them.
They pay the same.
You've got them pegged to the same type of corporate tax structure. If you do, what are you talking about when you're eliminating these deductions on one side? Some may call it a loophole. Well, depreciation is a pretty important tax provision for us in the farming industry. We have a lot of depreciable assets moving around out there. Cash accounting is very favorable for the agricultural industry because of the whims of markets and weather. So, we want a competitive corporate code for our big industries, but not lose sight of what's also homegrown out here. That's the biggest employer we've got.
So maybe have a bifurcation in terms of the size or the type of the corporations that are paying a particular rate under the code.
You may not have to bifurcate it, but I think the starting point is, okay, what is going on with the other countries? We've gone global in our markets. We've got to do the same thing for our fiscal policy and our taxes.
And you've got to get to the bottom line, which is what's the purpose of a tax credit or a subsidy or a mandate? What is the purpose in having that? What's it just to encourage folks to do something that you want them to do? And if you eliminate everything, then you're purely market driven, which is fine as long as the market can anticipate the future. But if you eliminate everything and you're purely market driven, how do you encourage new technologies and new fledgling industries to come into the business? How do you encourage them to come in when they're not profitable? Do you say you have to be able to be market profitable when you get here? If that were the standard, we wouldn't have a lot of industries that we have today. So you've got to figure out if we're trying to get new things to the marketplace, we've got to have rewards for them to get to the marketplace until they get stable.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people would point out that ethanol is an example of a product that a lot of us feel should have never been elevated to where it is, and certainly not through the billions of dollars of Midwest congressmen and senators who have backed it. That's one where the government picked a winner. And, when the government picks winners and losers, ethanol may be the winner and you may be the loser. And it may have to do with political power and how many people from your states are the chairman of the Ag Committee or whatever. And some folks say, well, yeah, there's uncertainty in the market, but at least it's not the government picking ethanol over somebody else. So that is the debate that we certainly need to have. We've gotten a lot in this, which is great. We've got about 13 more minutes. Are there anybody else on the corporate side? Because this is real important, because this is what we're in the process of working through. I mean, this is the debate that's going on. I don't know what's going on with the super committee because they don't talk much. But this is one of the things, tax reform writ large, that we were hoping would be addressed in some way by the, quote, super committee. The Ways and Means chair is on the super committee, and so we thought there might be a chance of that. Now, as the time runs out on this committee, there's less and less chance that something bold, which I feel we need some bold things done, there's less and less chance that's going to happen. Anybody else want to comment on the corporate side? Because I want to talk about those of you that may have LLCs and may be taxed through the individual. Yeah.
We represent a multinational, and then what we are saying is a lowering corporate tax rate while taking out the so-called subsidies is always a good thing, because it gives a level playing field. What wind industry is really looking at is a level playing field against more mature technologies. Though we are not in that innovation stage anymore, this industry has been around for about 30, 40 years now, and the costs have come down very, very significantly. What we are really looking at is a level playing field. So if you're going to take out subsidies, take out for everybody.
What's your, if you don't, I don't know if you can tell us, but what's your effective tax rate in the U.S.? You know?
It very much depends upon what revenue we end up making.
The particular year.
It's particularly about, I can give you a comparison between Europe and U.S. It's effectively 6 to 7% higher in United States as compared to Europe, effective rate. On a demand side, PTC is the single most important tax incentive or tax credit that industry has. And it would be an ideal situation if it's made permanent in some ways that more mature industries enjoyed since, say, 1930. We are very much open for all of the above policy. Wind by nature is intermittent. So we're not saying that by any stretch of imagination that it will become a baseload industry. But all of the above, where we encourage energy diversity, encourage homegrown jobs, is what driving us to go to the Congress repeatedly and say, give us something which is common sense, which is more certain, and which creates a level playing field.
By the way, if any of you want to get me information on the obstacles you talked about, specific regulations, and I've talked with many of you about them, and we have a lot of that. But if there's something you think we don't have, I'd be real interested in getting it. I'd really be interested, to the extent you can share data, in knowing about your tax structure, what you pay, what you would pay without the PTC, for example, and what would have to be done to deal with that. And the reason that is, as I said, is on the front burner for me is because that stuff is happening. And we need to make sure that everybody is part of that conversation. Now, how many LLCs are paid from the individual tax? I know, Kelly, a lot of the folks that are members of your organization do. Are you a corporation in your business, or an LLC? Or?
Yeah, I have a sub-S.
Okay, so you're paying from the individual tax code. Anybody else? LLC, okay, LLC.
Partnerships, individual.
Okay, so you're paying, so you're pass-through entities, and certainly the tax discussion that has been going on in D.C. has talked both about the corporate and the individual side, and doing some similar things on the individual side with not necessarily eliminating all deductions, but streamlining, because we have a tax code that's 60,000 pages, and the goal is to, get it down to maybe 59,000. I don't know. That's probably the way things will work in Washington. Well, we've got a few more minutes here, and got a question here. It asks how many jobs did your corporations create when the tax rates were lowered in 01 and 03, correlation between tax breaks and job creation. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but the corporate tax was not, the 35% rate was not a part of the 03 individual marginal tax rate reductions. Am I wrong on that? Yeah, so do you have something on that, Hugh? No. Yeah. So, in any event, if any of y'all want to comment on you were talking about, you want to talk about what your company, what would your company look like without the tax credit, subsidy, whatever you want to call it, PTC? What would that do to your company?
In Arkansas, we have about 300 plus jobs, and we hope to grow it aligned to the industry expectations. Typically, over last decade, what has happened is whenever the PTC has expired, the wind installations have gone down between 75 and 95%. And multinational corporations who are operating in the United States are not going to employ people just to have them come to the office and do nothing. So it effectively means a 50 to 60% reduction in number of jobs, because some of the jobs are on a continual basis in terms of maintaining the assets or maintaining some of the stocks that customers keep with us or post-sale service. The biggest threat is to the manufacturing jobs, and it's very much aligned to the megawatt that are installed.
So a lot of these credits are not credits and deductions or loopholes for your company per se. They drive demand in the market by incentivizing individuals to pursue your product. Is that fair?
It essentially incentivizes the utilities or the independent power producers to to buy more wind.
Yep. And that's government through the tax code saying, we are making a decision that you are a winner unless it runs out, and then you become a loser and you become a winner again. So, okay. As we wrap up here in a few minutes, is anything that anybody wanted to say that I just didn't? Yes, sir.
You know, first I want to thank you, Congressman, for voting for the free trade agreements. Those 3 FTAs are extremely important, not only to agriculture, but to all the state of Arkansas. You know, that'll bring in, of course, agriculture is the largest industry in our state with $16 billion a year that it brings in. But those trade agreements will bring in a lot of jobs. In fact, they'll bring in about $150 million a year. And also, that's about 1,200 jobs that turns out to be. U.S. Trade Representative says that for every $1 billion of trade, that supports 8,000 jobs. So that's a tremendous job tool for our state, and 500 of those jobs are directly related to agriculture. But 1,200 jobs will be brought into the state because of those FTAs. Another quick point that I'd like to make to you is that, we're having a lot of discussion in Congress about Farm Bill and deficit reduction. And one integral part of our safety net in agriculture in Arkansas is direct payments. And those are domestic supports, not subsidies. Those are domestic supports. So what, that's a lot of jobs as well. That's $244 million that comes into our state every year from direct payments alone. And that's supporting a lot of jobs in our state because we are such a large agricultural state.
Congressman, I'd like to just say that in relationship to renewable liquid fuels, there's quite, I think, an opportunity in Arkansas. We're a biomass-rich state. And as opposed to looking at the subsidies and for kickstarting these industries, is that one positive move on the part of the government was the Department of Defense's recent commitment to purchase plug-in fuels and to long-term purchase contracts could really help to kickstart an industry like that. And Arkansas sort of has the perfect storm. You know, we have the Air Force Base here, we have the biomass, we have the ability, and the technologies are finally coming online. And I believe that that's a real opportunity that can be pursued, not so much with subsidies or tax breaks, just simply having the government to commit to purchase for a long-term permit, and it makes the bankers feel better and everything. But that was a good positive move, I think, on the Department of Defense.
I agree with that, and I think that as we talked about earlier briefly, the willingness and the ability of DOD to pursue biofuels is a national security issue. Obviously, to run the jets, I've talked to some of the folks who talk about performance and what have you, and they have a great track record with biofuels. And in fact, I toured Little Rock Air Force Base with the Pew Institute, I don't know, maybe a month ago. And the point of the tour was to take a look at some of the things they're doing with LEED certified buildings and talking about the bio fuels. And DOD, because they are such a massive, massive consumer of energy, not just electricity, but oil and gas and what have you, they are a perfect, I mean, if they're going to use it, let's have them use our stuff. And so I totally agree with that. We're basically out of time. Is there any last comments that I know? I'm sorry.
I'll be very brief. This would be my message to Congress, sir, is that particularly on the energy side, is that they are not playing from a current playbook. They're playing from circumstances and assumptions going back to 2005.
As Randy just described earlier, Danny described earlier, we've just made tremendous progress on the energy side in the last 2 or 3 years. It is a game changer waiting to happen. We've got to have policymakers recognize that. The ethanol thing that you said that you wanted is that we are feeling now the unintended consequences. You can ask Ken in the poultry industry right now. I grow corn. I like feeding chickens. I like feeding chickens at $7 a bushel on corn.
Yeah.
But that business model is not sustainable. I need to have a viable poultry industry here for Ed Long.
Sure. Oh, I agree with you on that. And I would say that when you talk about Congress, I would just encourage you to distinguish between the House and the Senate. we have completely different views. You know, I will tell you on the oil and gas side, we have been very forward-leaning, at least in the House. I am all for exploration, making sure the technology is safe, surely, but we have passed lots of bills that relate to opening up exploration, and they are piling up like cordwood on the Senate steps. Time is up. Thank you all so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.